You ever wonder what happens in a jail when the sun goes down and the real monsters wake up? I thought working nights would be quiet. Just me, some old hallways, and a few inmates sleeping. But Gonzales County Jail has rules etched into the concrete, rules the warden before me scratched into his own skin. And if you don't follow them, cell doors open on their own, and something not human walks free. Asterisk, the job posting was simple. Night warden needed, Gonzales County Jail. Must be comfortable with unusual conditions. Unusual conditions. They didn't tell me what that meant in the interview. No one ever does when you're desperate for work. I was living out of my car in the suffocating heat of South Texas, bouncing between low-level security gigs and soup kitchens. I'd run out of second chances, and this job was offering a room in the warden's quarters, a steady paycheck, and, oddly, no background check that I should have known something was wrong. But desperation dulls your instincts. And by the time I drove through the rusted gates of the jail, past the bent sign that still read Gonzales County Jail, I was too numb to care about the way the air shifted colder the moment I passed the front gate. Sheriff Tolliver met me at the entrance. His skin was gray like old cement, his eyes sunken deep into their sockets, and his handshake was cold as if he'd been holding ice. "You the new night guy?" he asked, voice gravelly, eyes avoiding mine. "Yes, sir. Name's Ray Mercer." He just nodded, turned, and walked. "Come on then. Let's go over the rules before you start tonight." That was the first red flag. Rules, not protocol, not procedures. Rules. Candle Rule 1. Never open cell 6, even if the inmate inside screams for help. There is no inmate in cell 6 that we were standing in the control room when he said that. The monitors flickered with black and white feeds of empty hallways, dim cells, and, strangely, one completely dark cell. "Cell SIXS cameras busted?" I asked, gesturing toward the black screen. Sheriff Tolliver didn't even look at it. "That feed's been dead since 1992. Never fixed it. But the power's still running?" He finally looked at me, expression unreadable. "Don't open cell 6, son. No matter what. You hear me?" I nodded, unsure whether he was screwing with me or not. He pulled out a yellowed notepad and handed it to me. Worn, wrinkled, and stained with something dark in one corner that on the front was written in bold capital letters. Rules for Night Warden. Do not deviate. I opened the notebook slowly, heart pounding as I read the first few pages. Warning: the rules never open cell 6, even if the inmate inside screams for help. There is no inmate in cell 6. Every night at exactly 3:13 a.m., a call will come through the front desk phone. Do not answer it. Let it ring. At 2 a.m., a man in a deputy uniform may walk in and ask for the body. Tell him he has the wrong facility. He will leave. Do not ask questions. If you hear knocking coming from inside the walls, ignore it. Never knock back. Check the inmates every hour. If one is missing, do not search for them. Count to 60 with your eyes closed. They will return, if you're lucky. Never sleep, even for a second. The thing that replaces you in your sleep doesn't clock out. You think you can follow these rules? Sheriff Tolliver asked me. As serious as death, I thought he was joking. I wished to God he had been joking. I nodded. Yeah, of course. He just sighed and handed me a key ring. You start tonight. New Moon Night. And it was 11:59 p.m. when I locked the gate behind the sheriff and officially became the night warden. The facility had 12 operational cells, though only 5 were occupied. The rest were sealed off, most condemned or gutted for renovations. That never came. Each inmate had their own quirks, but they were quiet that first night. Too quiet. I did a walkthrough, my flashlight beam cutting through the dust like a scalpel. The smell was wrong. Jails always smell like piss, bleach, and hopelessness. But this place had another layer. Something old, wet, and buried. As I passed by cell 6, I paused. The door was welded shut with thick steel plates. Still, I could feel something on the other side. A presence. And then, I swear, I heard breathing. I turned, trying to laugh it off, but the hallway behind me was pitch black. My flashlight flickered once, then again, and then a whisper, like someone just behind my ear. Help, please, it's burning in here. I bolted. I didn't care what the sheriff said. This had to be a prank, but no one was there. Telephone receiver 3:13 a.m. I had just gotten back to the warden's office when the phone rang. The old rotary phone on the wall had dust so thick it looked like no one had touched it in decades. Yet here it was, ringing. I didn't answer it, not the first night. But I counted 1, 2, 3. It rang 13 times before going dead. Then the silence returned. And then the screaming began. From cell 6. I didn't open it, but I stood outside that door for 10 full minutes, listening to someone beg me, by name, to help them. The rest of the night passed in fits, cold sweats, whispering voices over the intercom, and flickering cameras showing inmates sitting upright in their cells, only to be lying down again a frame later. By sunrise, I felt like I'd aged a decade. Sunrise over mountains morning. Sheriff Tolliver returned at exactly 6 a.m. I expected him to laugh at me, to welcome me to the initiation. But instead, he just stared at me. You saw something? Yeah, I croaked. Cell 6. Then you lasted longer than most, he said. He clapped a hand on my shoulder and whispered, don't ever fall asleep in this place. I nodded. I wanted to quit. I wanted to run. But something about the jail was holding me. Like invisible chains, like it knew I'd come, and it wasn't done with me yet. The second night began before the sun had even vanished behind the scrub trees of Gonzales. I could feel it, like a cold front settling over the jail before darkness even touched the windows. Sheriff Tolliver didn't say much as he handed me the logbook and keys again. He just looked at me with hollow eyes and muttered, if you feel like something's watching you tonight, don't look back. Not even once. And then he drove away, his tires crunching across the gravel, taillights vanishing into dusk. I stood alone in the control room for a while, watching the sun disappear. The shadows in this place weren't like normal shadows. They moved, they spread, and when darkness came, it came fast, like it was swallowing the jail whole. The air conditioner rattled to life for a moment, coughed like it was choking, and died again. Just like the first night that I checked the clock. 6:00 p.m. My shift had officially begun. 6:45 p.m. First round was uneventful. The inmates were quiet, most lying on their bunks, staring at the walls. All except one. Inmate number 0421, Daniel Cruz. A former cop turned convict, booked for manslaughter during a DUI crash. He stood at the bars of his cell, gripping them so hard his knuckles were bone white. Warden, he hissed, eyes wide. Did they tell you about her? I stopped. About who? He glanced down the hallway toward cell 6. He lowered his voice to a whisper, the burning lady. My stomach clenched. Before I could ask more, a sharp click echoed behind me. I spun around, hard in my throat. Cell SAXS padlock had shifted. The welded steel hadn't moved, but the lock, it was unhooked, hanging slightly ajar. The hallway felt colder now, almost wet, like the air after a thunderstorm. Except no storm had come. I looked back to Daniel, but he was gone from the bars. Back on his bunk, silent, almost like he'd never spoken. 8:00 p.m. A new rule. I returned to the control room and reviewed the yellowed rulebook. My hands trembled. Every word etched into those pages felt older than the building itself. I flipped to the final page. I noticed something new, a freshly added line in a darker ink than the others. Rule 7. If cell 6 unlocks itself, do not speak her name aloud. Not even once. Names give her strength. I hadn't said it yet, but I had heard it. I shut the notebook fast, heart thumping. Suddenly, the intercom system crackled to life. Wailing. The voice that came through wasn't male. Wasn't alive. It sounded wet, like lungs half full of water. Each syllable dragged, soaked with pain. I scanned the monitors. None of the inmates had moved, but I heard the voice again. Closer now. You heard me last night, didn't you? And then it laughed. A wet, choking laugh that made my skin crawl. I slammed the intercom switch off. It kept laughing. Even with the system off. 9:30 p.m. The knocking begins. I was doing another round when the first knock echoed from the walls. Knock, knock, knock. Soft. Slow. Deliberate. Like fingernails against plaster. I froze. The corridor was empty. The knock had come from between the walls of the east wing. I remembered the rule. If you hear knocking coming from inside the walls, ignore it. Never knock back. I took a deep breath and kept walking. Knock, knock, knock. Again. This time closer. I reached the end of the corridor and turned. The hallway behind me was now pitch black. My flashlight wouldn't turn on, and I wasn't wearing gloves. I felt something cold wrap around my fingers. A hand. I screamed, spun, and ran, sprinting back toward the control room, Heart jackhammering in my chest, I didn't look back, that I remembered Sheriff Tolliver's words. If something's watching you, don't turn around. I didn't point 10:00 p.m. surveillance footage. I locked myself in the control room and pulled up the monitor feed. Inmate Daniel was still lying down. The other 4 inmates had moved positions slightly. One was rocking in his bunk, mumbling. Another, an older man with a shaved head, was staring directly into the cell's security camera, not blinking. But then I saw something on CM6. That feed had been dead since 1992. Or so I was told. Now it was flickering. Lines of static broke. Up an image of the dark cell. Something was there. A figure. I leaned closer. A woman. Long hair. Head tilted. Skin blackened like it had been burned to charcoal. She was just standing in the corner, still, watching the camera, watching me. And then she smiled. Her teeth were melted together, and her eyes, God, her eyes were just holes. The feed snapped. To black. 11:30 p.m. The wrong deputy. I was almost calming down when I heard footsteps echo from the front lobby. A man entered. Deputy's uniform. Badged. Hat low over his face, that he didn't knock. Didn't greet me. Just walked to the front desk window and said in a low, hollow voice, "I'm here for the body." I almost forgot rule #3. I gripped the desk so tight my knuckles popped. I think you have the wrong facility, sir. He didn't blink. Just stood there for several seconds, then nodded once, and walked out the door. I checked the security feed. There was no trace of him outside. 12:57 a.m. The missing inmate. During my next cell check, I realized inmate number 0399. Henry Keys was missing. His bunk was emptied, and no signs of struggle. No busted lock. Just gone. I panicked. Was it a breakout? No alarms were triggered. Then I remembered the rule. If one is missing, do not search for them. Count to 60 with your eyes closed. They will return, if you're lucky. I didn't want to do it, but I closed my eyes, and I counted 1, 2, 3. I reached 60. I opened my eyes. Henry was back in his bed, curled up in the fetal position, whispering a prayer over and over. He was bleeding from both ears. 3:13 a.m. The call it came again. Ring. This time I stared at the phone, breathing hard. My curiosity got the better of me. I picked it up. Hello. Static. Then a voice. But it wasn't a voice. It was many, all speaking at once. Children, women, men, crying, screaming, begging. Then one clear voice rose above them all. The same wet voice from the intercom. You broke the rule, Warden. Click. The phone went dead. Every light in the jail went out. 3:14 a.m. The blackout. Total darkness. Emergency backup lights failed. The air went ice cold. I could see my breath fog in the air. And then I heard her. From every corridor, every pipe, every vent. A dry dragging sound. Nails across concrete. Skin against rust. The hallway monitors flickered on again. This time on their own. Every screen showed the same thing. The hallway outside cell 6. The door was open, and something was crawling out. This jail remembers everything. Every scream, every drop of blood, every fire. It's built on something that should never have been buried, and someone that refused to die. When I tell people what happened on my 3rd night at Gonzales County Jail, most assume I'd lost my mind, and maybe I had. But even now, sitting here, eyes bloodshot, smelling like fire and fear, I remember every second. The flicker of the lights, the sound of bones dragging across concrete, the smell of burnt hair and sulfur. I remember her eyes, if you can even call them eyes, and I remember the sound of the other wardens, the ones before me, screaming inside the walls. 12:00 a.m. The door is open. The door to cell 6 was wide open. The welded steel, the padlock, the iron chain, gone. Not broken, just missing. Like they'd been peeled away by some unseen force. On the monitors, I watched as black smoke rolled from the threshold like it was seeping from hell itself. The temperature in the control room dropped to 28 degrees Fahrenheit. I could see my breath clouding in front of my face, and then I heard it. CRK, Darge. It wasn't footsteps. Not exactly. It was the sound of bare, charred feet slapping the floor, one dragging behind the other. Something was walking through the jail. Something not alive. 12:08 a.m. A figure on camera. 2cm2. The hallway near the infirmary flickered to life. I saw her. The burning lady. She moved like broken marionette, jolting forward in violent twitches, her head twitching unnaturally, shoulders dislocated and swaying side to side. Her skin was blackened, burnt to the bone in places, and her dress. It was still burning. Flames licked around her, but cast no light. Only shadows. And as she turned toward the camera, I saw her mouth open too wide, unhinging like a python's jaw. Inside, I swear, were faces, screaming faces. Some looked like inmates, some looked like former wardens, some looked like me. 12:15 a.m. She spoke over the intercom, without the button being pressed. Without a mic, just her voice, and she spoke in whispers, in a dozen voices. Some of them children, some of them sounding like Sheriff Tolliver. "Warden, you broke the rules. You opened the door. You let me out. You let me in. Now I get to play." 12:17 a.m. The return of the dead alarms blared from Sector D. Though no one had touched the console, lights strobed red that I flipped through monitors, only to see that the condemned cells 7 through 12, were now occupied. Men in jumpsuits, all pale, all dead-eyed. One pressed his forehead against the glass, blood trailing down his face. He whispered into the camera, "She's here for us first, then she'll come for you." One by one, each man in the dead wing snapped their own necks in unison, just like that. And the lights went out. 12:30 a.m. I made a run for the generator. I grabbed the flashlight and bolted down the west hall, passing rows of now empty cells. Inmates stood at the bars, whispering prayers, or banging their heads against the wall in terror. I turned the corner past cell 3. I caught movement. A face, burned, melting, mouth split open. She was standing there, the burning lady, watching me. I turned to run, but the floor beneath me shifted. Tiles cracked, the walls breathed, and from the vents poured ash and soot like a blizzard from hell. I ran. Every step echoed like I was sprinting through a cathedral made of screams. 12:43 a.m. The journal in the basement. I made it to the generator room, but on the bench just outside was a leather-bound journal I had never seen before. The cover read, "Property of Warden Samuel G. Rowe, 1948. I flipped it open. The pages were brittle, but legible. July 12, 1948. We buried her too deep. Should have burned her bones and scattered them. But the sheriff insisted we wall off the cell and forget it. But she doesn't forget. July 16, 1948. She talks to us in our dreams now. We all hear her. Last night, she wore my wife's skin and called me to the basement." Henry answered. "They found him hanging in cell 6. But we never opened the door." July 18, 1948. This jail is her house now. Every night, she plays warden. Every morning, she lets us go, if we entertain her. But she's bored. She wants a new game. The last page was signed in blood. Rule 0, never stay past the 3rd night. I dropped the book. The generator wouldn't turn on. The plug was ripped out and melted. That I wasn't getting power. That I wasn't getting out. 1:00 a.m. The burning begins. I returned to the main corridor and smelled smoke. Every hallway was now coated in ash. The walls were sizzling, the light fixtures dripping with melted glass. Fire was spreading, but it wasn't natural fire. That IT didn't burn the inmates. Only the shadows. And in those shadows, I saw figures running, screaming, men in old uniforms. Some had no faces. Others were burning, but still walking, still screaming, and behind them, her, laughing. 2:00 a.m. A choice. The same fake deputy walked in again. Same dead eyes. Same uniform. But this time, he held 2 objects. In his left hand, a burnt key with a chain. In his right, a mirror covered in soot. That he spoke slowly, voice layered. "Choose, Warden. One leads to escape. One leads to truth. One burns you forever." I took the key. The deputy smiled and crumbled to ash. 2:12 a.m. The key fit. The key opened cell 6 again. Inside, it was no longer a cell. It was a chamber, a hole, carved into the ground, lined with charcoal bones and ritual symbols scrawled in blood. In the center, a black pit, and from it, a woman's voice, my mother's voice, called out, "Ray, come home. We miss you." I felt my knees buckle, but something inside me refused. I threw the key into the P. IT screamed. The walls of the cell began to collapse. 2:30 a.m. The lockdown sirens blared. Doors slammed shut. The entire jail went into automatic lockdown. But cell SIX's door remained open. Smoke poured from it. And then the other wardens appeared, dozens of them, in old uniforms. Their faces melted, their eyes gone, but their mouths still moving. They stood in the corridor, whispering, "She wants a host. She chose you. You stayed past the third night." 3:13 a.m. The final call, the phone rang. I let it ring 13 times. Then it stopped, and the room went black. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a single candle lit itself in the corner, and in its glow, I saw her, the burning lady, smiling. She whispered, "Welcome home, Warden Mercer. You're one of us now. Only 4 more nights." Some prisons are built to hold men. Others are built to hold something far worse. But what happens when the thing inside doesn't want to be held anymore? I was supposed to survive 3 nights. 3 nights, and the jail would let me go? That's what the last warden wrote in blood. That's what the inmates whispered in dreams. But tonight was night 4, and I was still here. 12 o'clock, 12 a.m. One of us now. The moment midnight struck, the candle in the warden's office extinguished itself. The room dropped into total blackness. Not darkness, but absence, and no shadows. No reflection. Not even the glow of the monitors, because the monitors were off, though no one had turned them off. Then came the voice. Not through the intercom, not through the phone, from inside the room. "You stayed, Ray. You chose to stay. Now you burn with the rest of us." A match flared in the air, hovering. No hand to hold it. Its flame illuminated a figure sitting in the chair across from me. Sheriff Tolliver, but his skin was melted to his uniform, and where his eyes used to be, just 2 black craters. His mouth moved, but it was her voice that came out. "I buried them all, but they kept digging. They burned me, but I kept walking. They locked me in cell 6, but I remember their names." Fire 12:33 a.m. The furnace in the basement. There had always been a rumor among the inmates about a second basement below the generator room, a place where condemned prisoners were once taken to disappear. I never believed it until I found the trapdoor under the floor mat, directly beneath the warden's chair. The old boards creaked like something alive when I opened it. The stairway beyond smelled like smoke and rot, and I went down, because by now, it was too late for turning back. The bottom was a furnace room, huge and circular, built from hand-chiseled stone. On the walls, names, carved into brick. Dozens, hundreds of names, some with dates, some with numbers. The center, a massive iron furnace, easily 10 feet tall, doors warped with AGE. It was lit, roaring, and chained shut. The air burned my skin, and yet, I walked forward, drawn like something in me already knew what waited inside. That's when I saw the plaque above it. Her body is in the flames. Her name is the lock. Do not speak it. Her name, that's what this had always been about. She wasn't haunting the jail. She was the jail, and she wanted someone to say her name, someone to break the final seal, and someone had. Drop of blood, 1:13 a.m. The bloodline, the journal I found earlier in the generator room, was missing when I returned, but in its place was a photograph. A black and white image from the 1950s. I in it. 3 wardens standing proudly outside the newly completed cell block C. I in the center. Sheriff Tolliver, T.O. his right, a young man with a sheriff badge that read Row. T.O. his left, my grandfather, Raymond Mercer Sr. The back of the photo read, "First to build it, last to burn." That's when I understood. My family helped create this place. The chains, the rituals, the burning. And now it was calling me home. 2 a.m. Her name. I woke up in a puddle of my own blood that I don't remember blacking out. But when I opened my eyes, I was back in cell 6. Except cell 6 didn't look like a cell anymore. It was a church made of ash. Walls of scorched brick. Windows flickering with the screams of the dead. The altar. Her. The burning lady. She didn't walk. She floated. Black flames trailing her gown. Her face split down the middle, revealing a column of teeth that reached into her chest. And then she spoke, but not to me. T.O. the jail. "Bring me the last warden. Bring me blood of my blood. Bring me the Mercer boy." Chains erupted from the walls. They dragged me forward, wrapped around my limbs, my throat, my chest, and her mouth opened. Inside it, 1,000 screaming faces. Then I said it. Her name, Enora? The walls shook, the air screamed, the entire jail began to collapse inward. Fire 2:33 a.m. The purge saying her name was the final rule. The one no one dared write. Because names bind things, and names also set them freed. I had broken the seal, and now I had to finish it. I dragged myself out of cell 6 just as the fire began to spread. Not normal fire, but ghost fire. It ate memory. It devoured regret. It climbed the walls like fingers looking for sinners. The inmates screamed in their cells, but the chains held them back, not to punish them, to protect them. This fire wasn't for them. It was for us. The wardens, the builders, the bloodline. Skull 3 a.m. The burning of Gonzales County Jail. I made it to the roof with the last can of diesel from the storage closet. I soaked the beams, the vents, the bricks. The screams below grew louder, not from the inmates, from the walls themselves. They knew. They had housed her too long. As I stood in the moonlight, looking down at the inferno, I saw them one last time. The ghosts of the wardens, standing at attention in the yard, melting, smiling, grateful. I lit a match and dropped it. 4 a.m. Ashes. They found me unconscious a mile away, covered in soot, coughing blood. The fire was ruled electrical. The inmates, every one of them, survived somehow, but no bodies were ever found in the rubble, except one. A woman's skeleton, curled inside a melted iron furnace, mouth frozen in a scream. Her name never made the report, but I know it. Enora Blackwood. A woman burned alive in 1912 by a mob of deputies who thought she was a witch, wrongfully accused, tortured, sealed in a cell, and over the years, forgotten, until someone said her name. Epilogue. The new Signa month later, they rebuilt the jail, new concrete, new wiring, new cells, but the cell numbers skipped from 5 to 7. Cell 6 doesn't exist anymore, at least not officially. But I saw it. During the ribbon cutting, I walked past the main hallway. I looked down the corridor, and for a split second, cell 6's door was open, and someone was standing in the dark, smiling, still burning. The final rule, Rule 8. No matter how far you run, she still knows your name. Don't work nights. Don't take the warden's chair. And whatever you do, never light a match. You may escape the building. You may survive the night. But some places stay inside you. It's been 87 days since the fire. I count each one, because sleep won't come unless I do. They put me in a government psych ward in Austin the first week. Said I had acute trauma, smoke inhalation, nerve damage, 3rd-degree burns on my arms and chest, memory distortion. They don't know the half of it. None of them saw what I saw. Cloud Day 1. The interview the arson investigator sat across from me, shirt crisp, breath minty, trying to mask his discomfort. You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Mercer. He clicked his pen. Now tell me again, how did it start? I didn't answer him. I couldn't explain that the jail wanted to die, that it had housed a soul older than any court record, more wrathful than any inmate. That I couldn't tell him that her name was Enora Blackwood, and that she was still burning under my skin. Instead, I looked him in the eyes and whispered, "You ever hear a building scream?" He didn't ask any more questions after that. Fire Day 4. The dreams begin. The first dream came on the 4th night. I was lying in my hospital bed when I woke to the smell of charred roses, and there she was, standing in the corner. Enora, half her, face melted, dress in cinders. Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Instead, her burnt hand lifted and pointed to my chest. When I woke, my gown was smoldering. The sheets beneath me, singed black. The nurses called it an electrical short in the bed frame. But I know the truth. She left something inside me. Link Day 13. The visit from Sheriff Tolliver. I wasn't allowed visitors, but one came anyway. A man in a sheriff's uniform, face obscured under a wide-brimmed hat. He walked into my room, sat at the foot of the bed, and stared at me. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "It never ends, Ray. You only pass the fire to someone else. You burn the walls, not the roots." She was buried beneath the jail, yes. But her rage was planted everywhere. I blinked, and he was gone. No staff saw him enter. None saw him leave. They said I imagined him, but I found a matchstick. Under my pillow, drop of blood. Day 20. The body count that week. A tragedy hit a juvenile detention center in Amarillo. A fire broke out in the solitary wing. 6 dead. One guard reported seeing a woman in flames before the alarms triggered. The story didn't make national news, but I knew what had happened. She wasn't done. Nora's curse didn't burn with Gonzales County Jail. It had just spread. Mantelpiece clock. Day 30. Home release. They finally let me go. Labeled high-risk PTSD, but not criminally responsible. No charges for arson. No trial. They gave me a stipend and a transitional apartment in a quiet part of San Antonio. The building smelled like paint and pine cleaner, but I could still smell the smoke. I could still hear keys rattling in doors that don't exist. And at 3:13 a.m. every night, my landline rings 13 times, and no one's ever on the other end. Whole day 37. The return of cell 6. I started seeing cell numbers again. In odd places. Apartment 6 scratched out. Elevator floors skipping the number. License plates with C6 burned into the steel. The world was trying to forget cell 6. But she remembers. She never forgets. And I think she's using me to remember it again. Day 50. Reflection. I stopped looking into mirrors. Not because I'm afraid of what I'll see, but because sometimes I see her instead. Looking back at me. Smiling. As if to say, you were my favorite. Video cassette. Day 61. The footage. I got an envelope. In the mail. No return address. Just my name in block letters. Inside, a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop. It contained one file. Footage _Gonzales CCT _scrub.mp, for I shouldn't have watched it, but I did. And what I saw. Camera 6 to 3:13 a.m. She walked into framed. No sound. She turned to face the lens, raised a hand, and waved. Then she reached up into the lens, and the feed glitched. A flood of images. Me as a child, standing at my grandfather's grave. The moment I took the job, a shadow following me since birth. The furnace, the candle, her face, burned, beautiful, and hateful. Then blackness. Candle. Day 77. The whisper in the walls. The apartment walls are thin, but the voices aren't coming from next door. They're coming from behind the paint. It first. It was murmurs, then screams. Now it's names. She's saying names again. Warden Rowe, Sheriff Tolliver, Raymond Mercer, and now mine. Over and over. In a voice like burning leaves. Luggage. Day 87. Packing up. I've packed my bags. I can't stay here. She's getting closer. She's burning through the layers, through the walls, through my thoughts, through my bloodline. I have one choice left. I go back. Where she was first burned. Where her bones were scattered. Where the fire truly began. A ghost town south of Gonzales. Abandoned, forgotten, marked only with one word carved into a tree. Nora, waxing crescent moon. Closing monologue for the audience, YouTube style. If you've listened this far, you probably think I'm insane. Maybe I am. Maybe this was all a stress-induced nightmare brought on by trauma, hallucinations, and grief. But I dare you. Go to Gonzales, find what's left of the jail. Walk into the ash. Stand where the furnace used to be. And listen. Put your ear to the ground and listen. You'll hear it, too. The heartbeat and the voice. One more night, Warden. One more flame. Let me in again. Fire. Final word. Some fires die. Some fires burn out. But others find a new wick. And now you know her name.